Three, two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, Erik Lundberg is on my program. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, good. I'm doing great, Wayne. How are you?
Today it's a little bit topsy-turvy because I had a late night yesterday, slightly hungover today, this morning. And of course, we are all, shaken by the news that Diego Maradona has passed away, right, due to a heart attack.
Oh, I'm not sure who that is.
Diego Maradona is like the greatest footballer that ever lived. He's a genius. He's an icon. Okay. And I think if you're a follower of football, maybe because you're from New York, so it's probably not so familiar to you, but for
I was born in New York, but I didn't live there for very long before we moved when I was a kid. So
right, it was a great correction. And if you're a football fan, I'm a big football fan. Ever since I watched, I think the first World Cup was 1986 for me when I was 9 years old. So he scored an incredible goal where he whiffed past like 5 England defenders, and from the halfway mark, he started his run, and he was accelerating, and he skipped through so many challenges, and he basically, just kicked the ball into empty net after he went past Peter Shilton, who is like one of the best English goalkeepers as well. So that was the World Cup and the match that basically, changed my opinion about football, about World Cup, about Argentina as a country as well. So it was a big shock to hear that he passed away. My newsfeed is all filled up with, footage and interviews and even podcasts where, or even documentaries where he appeared on, right? And so it was like really really emotional for me today, looking through all this footage and content. So so you can see I'm still a little bit scary, right now.
Okay. I've never been much of a football fan, so or sports fan in general, really. So my interests tend to go toward the arts. So but that's I understand when somebody who's that prominent in their field and as like at the top of their game, as it sounds like he was. That is a sad time when it happens.
And of course, the arts as well as the book publishing world, right? That's like another world out there that is an exciting world and also a fascinating world to me. And I actually learn more about what you're doing and of course the industry that you're in by having a hot pot, or should I say a clay pot chicken rice with you in town just a week ago. When we talk about so many different topics, right? And of course, your passion is all about not just 9 Inch Nails, where we share something in common. We love 9 Inch Nails to death.
That's right.
You had one. Fantastic. I'm actually wearing my NIN cap today, but I didn't. So apologize for that. And of course, we delve into like, your passion for writing, and of course your amazing book that I'm privileged to be able to get my hands on and read some chapters, especially the chapters where you had basically our favorite band, 9 Inch Nails, right, as a fictitious band that performed in one of the scenes in your book, right? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so it's so the book you're talking about is called a Fickle and Restless Weapon. That's the cover back behind me. So there is it's my first novel. It just came out in June, and it's my 25th book, but it's my first novel. So it's something I'm very, very happy that it's out now. And as I was writing it, it took a very long time to write and revise, and then come back and get it published and all that kind of stuff. So from kind of start to finish, it was about 15 years. It was a long time. And as I was writing it and then revising it and then editing it, all through that process, I was listening to 9 Inch Nails and Trent Reznor and his soundtrack work and the other stuff that he's done too. And so I'm a big fan of his. And as kind of a tribute to him and to 9 Inch Nails, every section of the book is actually named after a 9 Inch Nails song, a track. And then so there are 7 sections, and so each one is named after a different track that fit very, very well. So that's the cool thing about his 30-year output is that he's written so many songs and performed so many songs, and so many of them had like just perfect titles for the sections that I was writing. And then as you're talking about a little bit later in the book, I have one of my characters go to a secret concert that Nine Inch Nails is performing in kind of this fictionalized Singapore. It's a kind of my alternate world Singapore. I call it Tin Hau. And so there's a secret concert that happens with his band. It's the same band that they were here in, I think it was 2009 in Singapore. I can't remember if that was it, 2009, but
yeah, during the Wave Goodbye tour. And
the Wave Goodbye tour. Yeah, when they played at Fort Canning Park. So it was that lineup, that four person lineup is actually shows up in the book in that section. So it's pretty quick. It's not, unfortunately, I didn't spend too much time there with them. It's more to kind of punch up the emotions of that scene. Is this, having this kind of very high energy things that are going on in that scene. It reflects back on what the characters are going through as well. But yeah, it was fun to do that. It was fun to be able to stick in a fictionalized version of Trent Reznor and the rest of his live band to that section in that chapter. Yeah,
I could probably, I'm not able to even name one other person in the world who actually, use our favorite band, Nine Inch Nails, as a subject, as one of the fictitious bands in one of their books. Like there are not many people who write about their music, or even listen to the band, right? And you're one of those amazing people who have already published in over 2,000 books, and you actually dedicate
25 books, not 2,000 books. That's
25 books, yes, and actually dedicate some of the chapters around your favorite music. So definitely we're gonna deep dive right into that, because it's a question that I love to ask. People who I've met for the first time. And I've met you finally, after knowing you online for, I think, since the beginning of last year, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how did your musical journey, actually begin? Like, for my case, right, it started out by listening to smash hit bands, like Bros, Bananarama, Yes, the Communards. Basically, all these bands or artists or musicians were on the Smash Hits magazine that I used to buy when I was like 9, 10 years old. So it's like whenever they're on the cover, I just want to discover their music. So from Bros, I moved on to Tears for Fears. Tears for Fears, I moved on to maybe grunge, Nirvana, and then worked backwards, like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Mudhoney, and then moved to Sonic Youth. And I progressed on to Nine Inch Nails. I think they were huge in '92 because in Singapore, there's a music publication called Biennial magazine. And Chris was one of the so-called music influencers or DJs that basically was so ahead of his curve, in terms of like music discovery. So there was like 9 pages dedicated to just industrial cyberpunk music. And guess what? Nine Inch Nails was on the cover of Big Go magazine. That was way back in 91, 92.
Yeah.
So from Bros, I moved on to Nine Inch Nails. Nine Inch Nails, I moved on to Ministry and Skinny Puppy and Tool, Perfect Circle, and all these great bands that I listen to right now, like God Flash, etc. So how did your musical journey started?
Mine, I listened to a lot of hard rock and heavy metal when I was younger, and really even in middle school, I was listening to Anthrax and Iron Maiden and kind of those really, really heavy bands in the kind of the late 80s. And I had a friend. I actually played a musical instrument when I was in school, in middle school and high school, and then through university as well. I played the tuba, so not a very rock and roll band, rock and roll instrument, but I had an appreciation for music for sure, because I loved listening to it, but I also loved playing it. And when I was in high school, a friend of mine was in the percussion section, and they have on one end of the band room, they had all the lockers for the drum equipment and the percussion instruments and stuff. And on her locker, she had a Nine Inch Nails sticker, and I didn't know what it was, and I didn't really ask her about it either. But it was very intriguing to me, just the graphic of that logo, that kind of palindromic logo, the NIN logo, and so it kind of stuck with me. I didn't really ask her about it, but I remembered that. And so a few years later, when I was at university, this was about 95. So a few years after you discovered them. And so when I was at university, I was just at like the local music store one day, the local record store, and they had just like tons of CDs there that you could buy. and a really good selection, and aimed it at college students mostly because it was because the campus was so close. And they also had listening stations as well. So if there was a CD that you wanted to listen to before you bought it, you could just go take it up to the front counter and say, hey, I'd like to listen to this. And then they put it on the listening station and you listen to it. And while I was browsing around, I kind of just by serendipity just came across Broken. So the Broken EP. And just kind of the kind of flaming orange, kind of coloration of the cover. And again, that in logo, the kind of the single in on that one. But I remembered them. I remembered them from my friend's locker in high school. And I was looking, I was like, okay, this looks kind of intriguing. And so I brought it up to the counter and asked the guy if I could play it. And so he put it in a listening station and I started listening to it. And it was really like nothing I'd ever heard before. It was, I mean, I'd listened to some pretty heavy stuff. So after like the Anthrax and Iron Maiden kind of period, I got really big into Metallica and to more of the I guess proper metal bands. But this was still something that I had really never heard before. And it was just, I mean, it was filled with a lot of anger and a lot of pain and a lot of rage, but it was also really compelling. And there was things that he was doing with the sound construction that he was using. So it was not always instrumental sounds. Sometimes it was like we were talking about. Sometimes it was just banging rocks on things, or sometimes it was just different things that he was using to create these really interesting sounds, and then warp them using his different electronic equipment to do that. And so I was intrigued enough that I ended up buying it. And then I listened to it kind of over and over and over again for the next couple of weeks. And in my dorm room in university, kind of to my roommate's chagrin, he was not a fan. So he thought it was a little too loud, a little too noisy. But I really got into it. And then I started looking back through the rest of the catalog. And so I got Pretty Hate Machine. I started looking for the other Halo editions. So all of the releases that Reznor does, they have a Halo number. And so I was looking for the singles and for the maxi singles and that kind of stuff. And my kind of collector mentality kicked in as well. And so I was like, okay, I have to collect all of these now because they're all numbered. And so that kind of is what started it. And then when the Downward Spiral came out, I got really big into that as well. And so it just kind of progressed from there. So I've been a fan ever since then, and it's been a lot of the music that he's created. Very often, it kind of forms a soundtrack of my life as I'm listening to it. I haven't listened to a lot of the especially angry stuff in a while, but I'll still come back to it every so often. And like The Fragile it's one of my favorite albums by any musician ever, and I still very, very heavily listen to that one. And I was very excited too when the Fragile Deviations album came out, and so I've been listening to that kind of on repeat a lot. There's like a few albums that I do that with, kind of all the way through. And so when the Deviations album came out with some new mixes and some new songs that hadn't been previously released, I was super excited. And it's like a 37-track album now. So it's huge as a beast, but it's all instrumental as well. But it's really, really interesting to listen to. So I really love it. Yeah.
This is amazing. And, one of my favorite micro moments in life, right, was is basically, meeting a new fan of the same music from the same tribe, and, just hearing them talk about how they discovered our common favorite band. And, the way you discovered it is basically different from the way I discovered it, for example, because you went from heavy music, right, Anthrax and Iron Maiden, to Nine Inch Nails. So it's a natural progression. For me, it's like Bros, Nirvana, Nine Inch Nails. So like the moment when I bought the first album was the same one that you got, which is Broken EP. I got it on cassette tape, basically, from one of the shops in Chinatown that we were having chicken rice the other day. Yeah.
Oh,
And
from that same area. Okay.
exactly, is that particular cassette tape store that's just below that chicken rice store on top on the second floor. So it's on the first floor, and recently they just shut down their business, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's the place where I got all my tapes, right? And so I was like, just mere months or years before that, I was listening to Bros, right? Suddenly from Bros you go to Nine Inch Nails. That's like a big jump. So when I hear that tape, I brought it home. The reason why I picked out the tape in the first place was because I read that 9-page, pullout from Big Go magazine, this local Singaporean music magazine, where Chris Ho was raving about cyberpunk music. So he influenced me to buy that tape. So when I brought it home, I heard it. I think it was like after the first track, Pinion, right? I think it went into Wish. Wish is the one that basically freaked me out. I was so scared,
Yeah.
And I remember I stopped it immediately, and then I took the tape out, I threw it in a dustbin. So that was the moment when I look back, right, I kind of expected me to react that way, because I was still like 9 or 10 years old when it came out in 91. I think I was 11 years old, 11 or 12 years old. Yeah, so hearing that kind of alien,
frightening for an 11-year-old,
frightening, violent, non-humanistic way of singing that Trent Reznor is famous for his screams, right? I think it's a kind of strange feeling you get when you first discover, like maybe the picture or the photograph of a monolith, right in the middle of the Utah desert. Like, is this like from other world? It's something that totally is not from this planet. That's how I felt about the tape. So I threw it away. I didn't listen to the rest of the album, but guess what? 2 days later, I start to feel curious again. Like, I want to hear that strange sounds that were coming out from my speakers. I better go and buy a second copy. So I went back to Chinatown and bought a second, cassette tape. Broken again for the second time in a week, and this time I loved it. I basically gave it time. I was patient. Basically, I was impressed with the different colors that was painted. With the sounds that he generated from the album. It's like there is drum machine, there is synth. It's very synth heavy, right? There's a lot of angsty lyrics. And some of the lyrics actually are pretty interesting for me during that age, because it's like I'm also pretty angsty at that age. I think it really resonates. And for me, that was the one album that kicked off everything for us, right? For both of us.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you say that as well, because there have been, because Reznor goes through periods in his music making. And so it's not all the same stuff all the time. And so what's been really interesting to follow him through, so I was 95, so that was, 25 years ago. So to follow him through 2.5 decades of his art, it's been very interesting to see him move through different periods of making music and what he's kind of concerned with and either socially or kind of personally in his lyrics. And so there have been some of his albums where, like I mentioned, like The Fragile is my favorite album of his, and after that, when With Teeth came out, I think that was the next studio album after The Fragile, and when With Teeth came out, it was different. It was very different. It was very much all the guys in the studio. I think if I remember right, I think all the guys in the studio actually recorded it together, and so it was something where they were playing off of each other actually in the studio rather than recording every track and then assembling it later. And so, so that gave it a different sound. It was more guitar heavy. There was less layering of the different kind of sounds that he was making, kind of underneath the regular melodies that he was playing. And so, so at first I was like, okay, this is a bit odd, but I trust him as an artist, and so I'm gonna keep at it and listen to it again. And it's something where I would have to listen to it several times and then go, okay, I think I get it now, and then appreciate it after that. So there've been a few of his releases like that where it's been a departure from the previous thing that he's done, and it just takes me a little bit longer to kind of catch up to what he's actually doing musically. And so, but that's kind of, I've also taken that as a kind of personal inspiration as well in my own art, so that if whatever I'm writing, I'm never always writing the same thing. So I've been published since 2003, so for almost 20 years, and just recently publishing books within the last decade. So, but it's something where I don't ever want to settle on just one kind of thing that I'm writing, because also the writers that I really love are ones that don't just do one thing. They do many different kinds of things, and sometimes
like David Bowie, right?
Yeah, well, David Bowie is kind of a more extreme example of that, because he would even, like, especially earlier in his career, he would shift his persona on his different periods as well. And so whether he was Ziggy Stardust or the Thin White Duke or whatever he was doing, it was a complete kind of persona change. So he was a more extreme version of doing that, of kind of his restlessness as an artist. But even still, like the writers that I love, like Jeff Vandermeer, who I consider a friend, you can see different periods in his work as well, and things that he's concerned with. Even though the themes kind of mostly still carry through, it's the execution and the way that he's conveying the story that changes artistically. And so that's just very interesting to me as a creator, of not always wanting to do the same thing all the time, because there are artists and writers that do that they kind of in their lane, and they know what they're good at, and they just kind of keep doing the same thing again and again and again. And in some cases, they're very successful at it. They're very commercially successful. But that's less interesting to me than someone who's trying new things and not just kind of resting on what they're good at.
This is a common theme, because I interview like superb CMOs and of course content creators like you on my various podcast shows. So they all share something in common. They never want to repeat what they have done previously. They're always like looking to be ahead of the curve. I think that's something that maybe I should name drop Chris Ho again. He's always ahead of his curve when it comes to like music discovery and sharing, what great music are out there, so that people like me, can discover them on myself, on my own, at my own pace, when I'm like going record shopping. And they're not just like a champion of original content, creativity, painting like various different colors, so that their best work is never always about something they've done previously. It's always about the next one that they're looking forward to, or kind of create next. So like I'm waiting with a bit of bread, right? With what Nine Inch Nails or Trent Reznor is up to at this moment. Like he has progressed on, from making angry, angsty, music that are with precision riffing and, electronic drums, into really organic sounds on Fragile, and then moving on to soundtrack, making music. And filling the spaces and painting different sceneries in movies, right, that we all love, like Gone Girl. I think that's one movie that we love. I think he started with Lost Highway when he was responsible for curating the entire soundtrack, in the 90s. And got me into other bands like Lord, and of course Patti Smith, and so many other great musicians and artists like Rammstein. I think Lost Highway was pretty pivotal for me as well. Nine Inch is probably the band that is commonly for you and for me as well, responsible for changing the trajectory of a music appreciation, right? Like after you've gone to Nine Inch Nails, you go to, like even electronic music, you probably discover other bands that you neglected in the past. Like I discovered Robin Gristle, discovered Coil, I discovered other bands, so other artists like Gary Newman from Nine Inch Nails. So what about you? Like what are the other music that you discover as a result of, discovering Nine Inch Nails?
Well, I mean, Gary Newman I had already known from the 80s, because he was really huge in the 80s, and so I didn't really follow him so much other than kind of the singles that were played on the radio. So like Cars, especially, that was a really huge one in the U.S. So, but coming back around to him was interesting. So when they started to collaborate later on, like about a decade ago, I guess. Then it came back around again. So that was really interesting, and I did come to appreciate his other music more after that. More directly, like I discovered Marilyn Manson through Nine Inch Nails because of Reznor's support, and he produced, I think, some of his albums as well. And so Manson was a big one, and so that's really kind of the biggest one that I can think of in terms of directly finding out. I think with like you mentioned Lost Highway. So that was actually one of my first, because I had known, speaking of Bowie, I had known about his work in the 80s. and especially like Let's Dance and kind of the more poppy stuff that he'd done. And he was always kind of around and doing something but interesting. But I was never really into him when I was younger, and so when Lost Highway came around and Bowie had Deranged on there, the song Deranged. I got really interested in that after that, and then I discovered that was on an album called Outside, which was again I'm not sure about experimental, but it was a very interesting and more industrial sounding album than a lot of the other stuff that he's done. And so I really got into Bowie for a while after that as well. So even though I wasn't initially introduced to Bowie through that album, I had already known him, but I got kind of a new appreciation for what he was doing because of that.
Another thing that I discovered by interviewing so many great content creators, writers like you and CMOs, they are always experimenting, right? And when they experiment, they don't really care about success and failure. They just want to learn from it and then make a better next creation. And I think Bowie epitomized that. I think his best record is the last one before he passed away, which is
it's a good one. I'm not sure I would say it's his best. I might not argue with
Black Star, yeah.
But it is a very good album, and he put his whole heart and soul into that album because
what's the last one. Best favorite Bowie albums in your list? Top 3.
Oh man. Like Outside is definitely there because that's kind of when I kind of got reacquainted with him. So Outside for sure. Ziggy Stardust, and the Spiders from Mars. That one is definitely up there. And also I probably Low as well. So kind of around that time when I discovered Outside, a friend of mine also she was very much into David Bowie, and so she recommended that I take a listen to Low, kind of during his Berlin period, and it was really interesting. It was much more because I think he did that album with Brian Eno, and it was much more atmospheric, and it was much more of kind of this kind of melodic experimentation that was interesting to me. So that's probably up there as well. Yeah.
And interestingly, I think some of the other live band members of David Bowie, right? I think they're coming together at Trent Reznor and working on a live stream. I think probably some confirmation news will be out soon. But I saw on Instagram of some of the other live band members. They're talking about they're working on this particular project. So it's something that we'll definitely look forward to. And of course, it's always great to have David Bowie back in the limelight again. I think it's like sometimes after like an icon, right? After they pass away for a while, their name kind of fade away, fade away from memories as well. So these memories needs to be colorized again. And sometimes it's like these sort of live streams probably will bring back attention, to all these great artists and albums. And we are linking, like Nine Inch Nails, David Bowie, music in general to your book. The reason is because you're a very interesting writer to me personally, and your writings is going to be very compelling for me to read for the very reason that you have included Nine Inch Nails as one of your subject topics. So definitely we're going to talk about this part of the world where you live in. I'm living in the other world, which is podcasting. Tell me all about your industry, in terms of like, maybe we start out with the toughest question of what's the future of book publishing?
Oh, I can't answer that, man. That is a huge question. So
you're the best person to answer this question because you have published 25 books. You're you're working in the industry right now. So I just want to pick your brains on that. What's the future of book publishing?
Yeah, it's something that a lot of people are trying to figure out right now. So and especially right now during the pandemic, because everything has been kind of turned upside down. So in addition to the books that I've written and the anthologies that I've edited, I also work as a fiction editor at Epigram Books in Singapore, and so I do know a lot more kind of inside stuff in the industry because of that. And so it's been interesting to kind of see some of the things that have changed because of the pandemic, especially in terms of publicity and marketing, that because everything has basically gone online like we're doing right now. So
Yeah.
book launches have gone online. It's been really interesting for me to see that that, especially in the U.S., that bookstores have been partnering up with publishers to do events. And so, normally that would be the case anywhere, anyway, because an author would go to a bookstore, do a reading, do a session there, and hopefully sell some books for the bookstore. That's why the bookstore invites them there, so that they can try and hopefully sell some books while they're there. And it's been cool to me to see that has continued in an online way, where there are still really interesting launches and events, author events and stuff like that the bookstores are partnered with. We haven't really done that so much in Singapore yet. I would like to see us actually try and do that, because there are bookstores and chains here that are really wonderful at promoting local writing, Singaporean writing. And so there.
Oops! Suddenly
But
you disappeared from the screen. Yeah.
but they tend to be
Oh, you're
more
back live again. Yeah. Please
a
continue.
bit more
Continue.
kind of focused on the publishers themselves. And so it's something where the
Whoops.
actually involved there.
Yeah. For some
Sorry,
reason,
am I speaking now?
your image is disappearing intermittently. So it's probably something to do with your
I think I
device.
lost
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. No problem. So this is a proof that
I think
we're
I
doing
lost you,
this
Wayne.
absolutely live. And yeah, I think you're fine. Yeah. Can you please
I
continue
can't
your
hear
last
you now.
point?
Sorry.
Can you hear me right now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, probably you got a incoming call. That happens, or you just went to sleep because you're calling in from an iPhone, right? If I'm not wrong. Another way you can solve this, you can exit the studio and click on the same link and come back again. Let me see whether I could communicate this to you through a private chat. 1 second. Listen, leave the studio, click on the link, and come back. So we'll just wait.
Oh, there
And
we go. There we go.
yeah.
So
Can you hear
sorry,
me?
I lost. Yeah, I can now. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, something happened. I'm doing this on my phone. I just got a phone call. I think it like knocked the entire phone kind of crazy. So
Yeah.
So sorry about that. Yeah.
No
So,
problem.
yeah,
Please continue because you were telling us a very riveting story about what are some of your observations about the industry. Please continue.
Yeah. So like I think in terms of actual publishing, I think that it's still going to continue as it is right now, because that was one of the concerns that we had, especially toward the beginning of the pandemic and the circuit breaker, is that when people can't go out, when they can't actually physically go to these stores, how's that going to affect your sales, and how's that going to affect the health of your company? And at the beginning, it was very, very tough, because people literally could not leave their houses unless they were going to the grocery store or something essential like that. So thankfully, the bookstores here have adapted, and they've always had, like, especially like Kinokuniya and Books Actually, they've always had online sales, but then it got pushed much heavier towards that. Excuse me, when the circuit breaker happened. And so my publisher as well, Epigram Books, we also tried to push that heavily too, in terms of driving people to our website, driving people to buying the books that we've got. We actually completely redesigned our website so that now we are not only selling our own books that we publish, but also other Singaporean publishers as well, which is kind of an online extension of the Hugs Epigram Coffee Bookshop. Which is on Maxwell Road. So the physical bookshop there, that's shown up on so many Instagram photos because of the beautiful wall of books that's there. The idea of kind of transferring that as much as possible online was necessary to try and to survive kind of what happened in the pandemic. So thankfully, at least here, because our numbers have gotten so low, and because they started phase 2 of the reopening, and people were able to go out more and things like that, we've seen an uptick in our sales, and it's been better for us. But it's still been a very, very tough time for publishers, and so it's going to be something where, like I say, even before the pandemic, it was difficult to see where publishing was going. For a while, everybody thought ebooks were going to be it, that print books were going to be dead and ebooks were going to take over. And they did get very popular for a while, but then people realized that they actually liked print books better. And so the popularity for those came back around as well. So even before COVID kind of knocked us all off of our equilibrium, it was something that was tough because nobody really kind of knew what was going to happen next. And so it's even harder now because we don't know the effects of this. Even after we get into like phase 3 in Singapore, like worldwide, the book publishing ecosystem is still in really weird shape. So like, especially in the US, because of kind of the condition of the US right now in terms of public health. Again, people really don't know what the publishing industry is going to look like. There was a story that came out today that one of the biggest publishers in the US, one of the biggest in the world, really, Penguin Random House, they're going to be buying Simon & Schuster, which is one of the other biggest publishers in the US. And so I wonder if it's going to be like a more continual, conglomeration like that, where those big publishers are going to absorb more and more of the smaller ones. Even though Simon & Schuster is not small, they're a big one, but I wonder if that's going to happen or if it's going to lead to more smaller publishers opening up. I don't know.
This is really interesting.
Right now. Yeah,
it's really interesting because it's not unlike what's happening in the music world as well. We see music labels and recording companies merging one with one another, and basically there's a lot of big company, big firm play in terms of how they acquire certain companies and they merge and they become stronger, so they have more chance of surviving this pandemic. And I think like content creators, right, writers like you, we are all, on the same road when it comes to like how do we actually not just survive the pandemic, but to adapt and grow. And basically, being able to continue to make to do what we love, right, which is basically to create. And of course, I think musicians out there, they are all wondering different ways as well to continue to engage, continue to capture attention from people or audience or listeners or readers, people who like what they create or they write. So I think we're on the same road in terms of like trying to actually figure out this attention capturing economy, which is basically the game that we're all playing, right? That's why we're doing this podcast and this live stream as well, is in order to reach out to more people and basically, ramp up the chances of more interactions with your fans and your followers who are all tuning in either live or later on they'll be playing this on either their smart speakers or on their AirPods. So I think it's great that you're trying, to also like experiment. I think you learn from the masters like Trent Reznor and David Bowie in terms of like trying different channels. So you're in a way, you're not just a writer, you're also a digital champion because you're also like trying to be ahead of the curve, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it's important to get great work and great, books that you publish, get it out there to the audience so that we discover it. And I think that this particular episode will be shared very widely in 9 Inch Nails channels after this, especially all these Facebook groups where we are not just always talking about like, like the Hall of Fame induction ceremony was like 7 days ago, right? It's old news. Probably this week they should be.
That was it?
Maybe we should be talking about this particular podcast where a writer actually wrote about a fictitious band, which is like based around 9 Inch Nails in one of his chapters. So I think that's definitely a conversational topic for 9 Inch Nails fans to talk about. So I think I'm going to move on to the next question because of a lack of time. We're almost hitting 40 minutes. Can you imagine that?
Wow, it's gone fast.
Exactly. So
this
I want to
happened
ask
the other
you.
night too when we actually met up and had that clay pot chicken rice. Is that we were I only thought we were going to meet for like maybe half an hour, and it turned into like I think three and a half hours.
The whole night.
So, I enjoy that. I enjoy that when you're talking with somebody and kind of you don't actually notice the passage of time because you're so kind of engrossed in what you're talking about.
Exactly. So we don't keep track of time, and that means that the conversation is really enjoyable. And so far, it's been really enjoyable talking to you. So I think some of the things that you touched on earlier about the industry, how you guys are always experimenting as well and doing hybrid events, not just live virtual events, but in-person events, and the importance of bringing in like collaborations with partners, like all these content distributors, book distributors, right? And bookstores, especially. These are the places where we hang out. The community basically go there to also talk to people, to maybe not just attend book signing, but to interact with you when you're there, to play the event. I think these possibilities are actually minimized during this period. Hence, there are other like new technology that are popping up, not just live streams. Like I noticed before, before I actually, research on this particular program, when I'm expecting you to come on to talk about your books and all that, the first thing I did was basically to ask Google on my smart speakers, like, okay, Google, play me Jason Erik Lundberg podcast. And there was no such results, as in nothing was. Okay, that's the answer for my speaker. It was basically saying that, there is no. Okay, Google, stop. Sorry. So what happened was that there was zero such results. So there's no way for me to find out about your books. There's no way for me to find out about your background or some of the conversations that you engage, in with other podcasters. So it's like harder for me to find information about your book. So I'm thinking that, the community, right, definitely, has many touch points. It's not just in terms of like physical bookstore appearance, podcast, virtual, social. But these days, voice is also a big part of the game, right? What do you think of this area, this channel, in terms of like reaching out to your audience? Do you think like doing more podcasts like this will allow your books to be discovered in a new, different way in the future?
Yeah, sure. And it's something where, like some of us within Epigram Books, we've been talking about trying to maybe actually start a podcast as well. So, and it's really interesting in during this time, just specifically talking about podcasts, because as I mentioned the other night, I was at the very, very, very beginning of podcasting back in 2003, 2005. It was
you were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, so I had a kind of an occasional podcast that I ran, but it was where I would read my own work and read the work of writer friends of mine as well, and so it was something that I wasn't trying to monetize. It was just something that I thought would be fun. And it's really interesting that we're kind of in this kind of golden age, this renaissance of podcasting right now, where it's gotten a lot easier in terms of how to do it. And it's gotten a lot more appealing to a lot of different people, all different listeners. So, but yeah, I think any different, not different, I shouldn't say that, any kind of various ways to get your message out there, or just to get, like you were saying before, just to get some attention on your work, I think is a good thing. So, and it's something that we've been trying to work on as well. So it's as you say, we're in the attention economy. We're competing with every other thing that can occupy your time, including Netflix, including movies, including, whatever. And so, it's difficult when it feels like you're kind of shouting into a tornado sometimes, but trying different things and trying different avenues to maybe get more people aware of what you're doing is always a good thing, I think. Yeah.
And it's like technology really helps in these areas, because like we are all inundated with so much content, right? And it becomes noise after a while. Even like webinars, for example, too many webinars. Like which one should I tune in, or which one should I tune out? If like within 10 seconds, if I don't like it, I'll basically switch on to the next, find another webinar to join instead. So it's like it has to be really being able to grab the attention of the audience within the first 10 seconds. Like these days, when I do podcasting, I'll just jump right into the first question, sometimes without even asking, how are you? So it's kind of rude, right? But it's like this is how the world is developing into, and of course, smart speakers are helping to make it more convenient to find information. Like I wish, I would have actually completed reading your entire book in one sitting if I had, 24 hours. But with an upcoming virtual event that I'm planning, I actually didn't manage to find that 24 hours. I was actually hoping that I could just, jump right into that chapter when you mentioned 9 Inch Nails. And without even me touching my phone, right, I wanted to ask Google to just go directly to that chapter on Nine Inch Nails, and hoping that you will be reading that particular passage for us. So, of course, technology, have opened up so much possibilities. That means more heavy lifting and more work to be done, right? It's not just about writing a great book and hoping that it will be a success. There's a lot of other tasks that follows, and of course, you're in that world. You fully, have been doing a lot of hard work and reps. That's why your books are also successful. And what do you actually, expect, or what's your biggest gauge in terms of whether a book is successful for you or not? Do you value the experience of writing the book, or even, marketing the book and completing the whole promotion cycle of the book as the most interesting and fun things to do in your career? Or do you actually appreciate the moments when you're actually in the zone and writing the book? Which is your favorite moments when you're creating it?
Definitely the second. Yeah. So and I think part of it is because when you're doing the actual creating, that's when you have the most control over it. And so things like marketing and sales, and those are important factors for how a book does, but they're so outside your control. You can do as much as you can, but and even still, you can throw a lot of money into marketing and advertising and stuff, and it still might not, yield fruit for you. So it still might not be, technically, like, monetarily successful, even if you do something like that. So for me, it's not been like constantly checking my sales numbers. It's not been I'm not. How do I say it? I tried to promote the book as much as I can, by doing things like this, where I'm trying to get the word out. But I don't necessarily say I don't gauge success by that, because I think that can drive you crazy. So it's more about, did the book do what I wanted it to do? Did it actually accomplish what I wanted it to do? And I think that it did. And so thankfully, the book that is on bookstore shelves that people can buy, it did artistically what I wanted it to do. And that's kind of how I have to gauge the success for myself.
That's brilliant. And I think we share that in common as well. Like the process is definitely outweighs, like what's are the other, things that come along with it, especially results, right? Something that we can't control. But of course, the process is something that we all can learn greatly from. Like the more you create, the better you get at it. So it's like, do you also find it incredible that, that you're able to incorporate like your favorite music, your favorite bands into your writings? Like you always admire Trent Reznor, right? And of course, you can actually have his name inserted in maybe one of your passages or paragraphs or an entire chapter devoted to him. Can I have to say,
this is like the first. This is the first work of fiction where I've actually done that. So even though he's been a massive influence on me for a very long time, this is the first time where I've actually inserted him, like a fictional version of him, into the story. And I think it's because I was telling such a big story that by doing that, it's just kind of a drop in the bucket for everything else that I'm trying to do in the book. So it's not that I'm going off on this huge tangent where all of a sudden I'm talking about nothing but him, but it's just kind of sprinkling him in, and also relating it as well as like one of the characters, his sister, when she was younger, was very much in the book is very much into Nine Inch Nails, and so I could kind of incorporate that and have echoes there. So like I can talk about the influence earlier in the book and then have him actually show up later on in the book. And so it's things like that where I can have echoes throughout the book that he's involved with, kind of unbeknownst to him. So yeah.
So we're definitely going to talk about more, because we have many creatives tuning into this Creatives Asia podcast. So they're always wondering, how to be more successful at it. So I think you have nailed the creative part, the process, and where you drew inspirations, like from the favorite music that you listen to, like Nine Inch Nails and David Bowie. So can you tell creatives out there, like exactly, how many, like for example, book deals have you received or turned down or actually accepted? What was the first book deal or sponsorship that you accepted?
Well, I mean, the first book that I actually had published was self-published, and and that was back in 2003, I think. And so that was just a little chapbook that me and my ex-wife put together. So the first book of mine that I actually signed a contract for was my first collection. It's called Red Dot Irreal, and that was through local publisher Math Paper Press. And so it was a big deal. You know, it was a big deal, kind of signing a contract for the first time, and just making sure that I was really clear on the terms and all of that as well. So yeah. So that was kind of the first big one. That was back in 2011 that I did that. So there have been, like I said, I've published 25 books since then. I ran a literary journal as well for 10 issues too. And so all of those were, you know, signed contracts for those too. So, and actually I really hate to do this, but I'm going to have to go soon. So yeah, maybe we can kind of wrap things up here.
Sure, and thanks for giving me that signal. I forgot that, you know, we are not like having a chicken rice dinner together now. We have time limit that we have to respect. And gonna, you know, end this podcast on a great way. Maybe tell us, you know, podcasting, right, changed my life completely. Did book writing and book publishing change your life?
It certainly has. Yeah, I think it was more about the writing itself that's changed my life. So it's something that I've enjoyed doing since I was a kid, and I really and I had some facility with it. I was pretty good at it. So and I was thankfully encouraged when I was a kid too, by some teachers and by my parents. And so it was something that I felt like I could continue. And regardless of publication, it was just something, the act of creation itself was something I really enjoyed. And so that has been the biggest thing in my life, has just been that avenue for expression of doing the writing.
This is fantastic. I think today you have shared so much knowledge about your industry, shared so much, you know, of your inspirations, especially, you know, I think those who are tuning in and curious about this band, Nine Inch Nails, that we're talking about, probably will go check out some of the records, right? Especially the Broken EP after listening to this podcast. So I think I'm going to have to end our program right here. And thank you once again for coming on and sharing with us your insights. And I think you're a great person to also have dinner with more regularly. I'm probably going to, you know, hit you up again whenever I'm in Chinatown so that we can have more claypot chicken rice dinners together.
Yeah. That'd be great, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate getting the chance to talk to you on the podcast here.
Same here. So please keep yourself safe and take care of each other. I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye.
All right, man.
Thanks.
Take care. All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.